Hello
Hi.
and welcome.
Hello.
It's episode 26 of discussion of your last three brain cells. It is I, Keegan, here with Marcus and Max. We're here at our 6-month mark.
The gang's
which we
back.
Woo! Half a year in.
It's been a while.
Yeah, weird. And we got busy.
It's only going to get worse.
It's fun though. I mean, yeah. But in theory, if we do this for the rest of our lives, we'll eventually hit 1,000 episodes.
What if we just do like 4 a day?
Just crank them out
Yeah.
until we get there. And somebody will find them and be like, wow, these guys got 1,000 episodes and they average 0 views for the last 900.
Dude, someone is going, we're going to do this for 2 or 3 years because this is just us bullshitting. Someone is going to find this 2 or 3 years down the road and be like, wow, this podcast is at 150 episodes and 200 total views.
Yeah.
They're really committed.
These guys are killing it over here. I don't know what they're doing, but they must think they're doing great. Oh, fuck. We don't do it for the views, though. We do it for ourselves, but we post it to keep ourselves regular.
I
It's
wish
the
you
same reason
guys,
we eat yogurt.
And
to
fiber.
the viewers, I wish you could see Keegan's armpit hair right now. It is out and about, airing it out.
People always make fun of me for my armpit hair because it doesn't grow in my armpit. It grows in my in a divot between my tricep and my bicep, immediately in front of my bicep or in front of my armpit. So I'm not sure if you guys see that, but this is my actual armpit and there's a little hair in there, but most of my armpit hair is
That's
out.
where it grows, though.
Yeah. My girlfriend makes fun of me because she's mean.
That tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, do you want to know what it's like living in the living hell of the sun never setting?
Kinda.
Yeah.
I went to bed last night at about 10 o'clock, or about 9:30. Took about
Sun's
half an
still
hour to
out?
fall asleep because the sun's shining on my face through my room darkening curtains. Yes, I know. I need blackout curtains. I'm aware. Buy them for me.
When's your birthday?
After the sun sets. Woke up about 4:30 because the dogs were annoying. Actually got out of bed about 5 to get ready for work. The sun had been up for 2 hours.
Gross.
I haven't even seen a sunset or a sunrise in about a month.
Does it actually set or does it just get close?
So I have a Garmin watch.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows what time the sun sets and sun rises every day. Just a little time. About a month and a half ago, my watch stopped showing when the sun sets. It only shows when the sun rises now.
We'll have to have a party next time it shows the sunset.
That's great.
This morning, the sun will rise at 2:59 a.m.
Do you like your Garmin watch?
Gross.
I love my Garmin. I wear this thing
But he
all
also
the time.
runs.
Yeah. And there's
Is it-
some awesome GPS on it
How do you charge it?
with a charging cable. So I would, if I could do this over, I would get the same one I got, but the solar, because I have a Garmin Instinct. If you get the solar one, it has the solar works so well, it ends up with a battery life of 2,000 days.
Jesus. How much is
It's
the solar?
fucking, it's awesome. I don't think it's any more expensive. It's about $350 watch.
Can you do smartwatch shit on it?
Yeah.
Be like, oh, I got a text. Or is it just a Garmin, a GPS watch?
I can do the most basic of smartwatch things on it. So just what I need. It shows that I have a text. And
That's
it shows
about perfect,
the
though.
first
Oh.
line of it. But it takes all the health measurements, all that shit that you want, and it's better than an Apple Watch because you don't have to take it off to charge it. So even though mine's not a solar, I only have to charge it about once a week.
That's not bad.
And that's
Yeah,
using
I
it for
fuck-
runs 3 or 4 times a week.
Reduces your fuckery dramatically.
It records all the paces, the steps I take in a day, number of stairs I climb, blood pressure, stress levels,
Jesus.
But that's through the roof.
sleep, blood pressure. Mine has it. The GPS function's really great. If you are into doing any sort of like navigation, it has a bunch of really cool navigation features. Like if you're gonna become like a avid hiker, getting a Garmin's a good idea. If you get some of the good ones like the Phoenix, you can actually download topographical maps to your watch, have topographical overlays of hiking areas, and download maps and routes and stuff.
Shit.
No, some of the Garmin watches are fucking sick. They were being issued to some of the spec ops guys and pilots for a while. I think they still might be.
Shit.
I messed up my stupid
Yeah.
Apple Watch.
The only reason, in my opinion, the only real reason to get an Apple Watch is if you do a lot of smartphone things, like a lot of watch things, like a lot of like reading texts and responding to that stuff, or you just want to show off that you have an Apple Watch.
Which is it, Marcus?
No.
Which
It's not.
group do you fall into? Or do you fall in group number 3, idiot who didn't look up Garmin watches?
Trey. My mom has one. And I think they look better too. I just didn't want to pay 300 and something bucks for it. I only paid like a tad under 200. Yeah, I think they look nice. I don't use the text features. The only thing I use, other than like mapping my runs and stuff like that, if I do, if I fucking even wear it, is I'll use like Spotify, and if I'm at work and I have it like on my desk while I'm doing paperwork, I'll just hit pause. That's about it.
So you can do a little bit of. There's a bunch of like, if you really look into it, and Marcus, I know you. I don't think you will. If you look into it, there's a bunch of like stupid widgets you can get that'll help and like do a bunch of different things. You can like pause and play and skip songs and stuff. That is a function, but to get to it, it's a pain in the ass.
Here's a question. Can you Bluetooth like just to your watch and then like have your music on your watch?
Not this watch.
So
No.
you don't need to carry your phone?
Not the Instinct. Some of the other ones you might be able to.
Because did I ever show you guys this pair of headphones I bought because I'm a child?
No.
So me and my dad are famous for going like, is this a thing? Like if not a thing, it should be a thing. But then with Amazon and the power of the internet, you can find the dumb ideas you have. So this is a pair of headphones that has internal storage. So they have a micro SD inside of them. So I can go on a run with just these headphones.
Oh, that's cool.
I bought these a couple months ago. Have I put music on them? No. Have I gone for a run? Also no. But I have these cool headphones, and you can buy them.
See,
To give them a quick plug, they're Ralyin, Ralyin.
you know what would fuck me with that?
They're like $30.
I listen to podcasts when I run.
You could load a podcast on. You
But,
just have to
that's
load them.
that's the thing, is I would have to.
You have to fuck with it all the time.
I listen to podcast, like the podcasts I listen to come out really frequently, and I listen to them whenever I like drive to work, and then whenever I run and stuff. So I listen to like 15 hours of podcasts a week. So I'm going through a lot of fucking time, and it would be a pain in the ass to update one. I'd be like listening because they're not like
You have to
serious
update it every
podcasts,
day.
but it'd be like, okay, cool. Now I'm listening to this podcast from 4 weeks ago while I go on my half an hour run. So I have to update it every 3 runs. So I'm like a week or 2 behind on the headset.
Right. I think for the right person, they're probably clutch.
No,
Like for me, because when I go on runs, I just listen to music, and I can put the same 10 songs on there and just go and just do the same 10 songs. And then in 8 weeks, I could put 10 new songs on.
and I think that's a good
When I go on
idea.
runs, yeah. When I run, I don't enjoy it. My running philosophy is that if I run faster, I have to run for less total time, and I will be done with my run sooner. So I run as fast as I possibly can.
You've never
So
had
if
to
I
run
wanted-
in a formation.
Exactly. But like that's why I don't like runs. I have a terrible running philosophy. I run very fast, and my times drop really quickly because I hate running so much that I do it really fast. But
There's a way to fix that.
Run in formation.
No, run for time.
Yeah,
And
that's what I need to do.
well, typically if I'm like really working with someone and they're having a lot of problems running and stuff, and it's just like they can't get better, can't get better, can't get better. I'm like, you need to stop worry about mileage. You need to completely eliminate mileage, and you just need to run for time.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter how
Like
far
just
you
run for
go
half an
or
hour?
how fast you run. You're gonna run 3 times a week for 3 weeks for half an hour at a time. That's all you're gonna
I
do.
think there's a lot of value in that.
And then after
'Cause-
that, you're gonna do 45 minutes.
Especially for like long distance like sports like soccer or
Mhm.
rugby, like at some point you just need to have a physical exercise event that takes 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way of knowing.
Well,
Like I'm going to play in a rugby tournament in July and it's like 10-minute halves and I'm going to have to get used to going on and having like 20 minutes of extreme exercise uninterrupted.
well, and that's whenever. If you want help programming for that, I'd actually love to help. That sounds like a really fun thing to program for.
Right, like
But-
actually program for a tens tournament.
Yeah. But if you notice, whatever we do with stuff with my dad with Strongman, it's essentially what we do. And it's one of the reasons I was so well conditioned for sports like rugby. Is that it was all things where for 10 minutes, you would do something that was incredibly intense, where for a minute, you'd be pushing yourself to the absolute fucking max. You'd have 2 to 3 minutes off, and then you do it again another like 4 times.
Yep.
So you get like really good at pushing yourself really hard for a minute, having a short recovery period, doing it again for a minute, doing it repeatedly for about 4 or 5 times, maybe 10, 15 minutes, taking a little bit of a break, and then going to do something that affects a different part of the body. And doing the same thing.
Which is rugby in a nutshell.
I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
So
One of my favorite. Yep,
I can go. I have a little bit of a rant here,
do it.
but kind of more along the tactical athlete side of it. But one of the discussions I kind of get into with people that bothers me is training for the army, training for the infantry, training for like combat and stuff. And there's a lot of people that have taken the opinion of you don't need to run long distances to prepare for running 2 miles. That the best way to prepare for 2 miles is running sprints, running like 400-meter sprints. And it's like, yes, you're not wrong, but our job isn't to run 2 miles. That's our PT test.
Right.
And it's important to be able to train and prepare and pass the PT test, but if you can effectively run the distances at the times that you need to be doing, running the PT test isn't bad. The argument comes in that we're training for combat, ultimately. That's what we're doing. And that they like to go, well, combat's a sprint. You're not going to be running 10 miles ever. No, you're not going to be running 10 miles in combat. But combat doesn't end in 30 minutes either. Combat is a marathon. It's a marathon made up of sprints. Imagine if you ran 26.2 miles, 100 meters at a time, as fast as fucking possible. That's what combat is. So I've been told. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to find out. But until then, I can imagine with the amount of adrenaline and just how much adrenaline's going through, how high your fucking everything is, you're just going to be gassed as fuck. It's all about training as fast, as hard as possible, and then being able to get up and do it again in 10 minutes.
Recovery is the secret. This reminds me of like my senior year wrestling. So I was a bit of a psycho, but I focused on getting better. Everything I did was geared to getting better. So I'm in your camp. We should be doing things to make the best version of ourselves, to be prepared to do the things we need to do. But then we had another guy on the team. He was also one of the captains. But so we had these morning runs, and on these morning runs, I would wear a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and I would run as fast as I could. I would run 3 miles as fast as I could, because I wanted to be in really good shape, and I wanted to be able to explode when I needed to explode. Because in theory, a wrestling match takes less time than running 3 miles. That's usually how they go. I don't know.
They're supposed to.
Right. But he would put on 5 to 10 layers. He'd put on like 3 or 4 sweatshirts, 3 or 4 pairs of sweatpants, a garbage bag, more sweatshirts.
I didn't know
and
I
he looked
wrestled
like a
at your high
snowman.
school.
What?
I didn't know I wrestled at your high school.
but he loaded up with all these layers and then would like walk, and he would just walk like 3 miles, and he would sweat because he was fat and he would lose weight. Which
he is,
I guess
if you explained it, he's fat.
But he wasn't trying. He didn't need to cut weight. Like he weighed like 170 something and wrestled at 182.
Okay.
But he was like, oh, this is morning running. It's like we're doing this, but morning running is supposed to be conditioning. It's supposed to be an event where we go and we all get in better shape by going for a run.
Yeah. So I'm definitely more in your boat on that. Like, if he'd been out there and he'd been running, even if he was doing a 9-minute mile, I'd been like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because then he's just fucking suffering. And that's what wrestling is. Ultimately, it's figuring out how to embrace the suck and deal with the suffering. Because it is, any contest you ever come into with another human being is the hardest thing you will ever do.
And it's not, it's a race to the bottom. I've realized that with a lot of things. Like rugby, it's who can just take more punishment.
So, war, specifically, is not about who can do what perfect. It's... there's a quote by one of the fucking generals in World War II. It's not what you can do perfect. It's who can fuck up less things, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not about doing things perfect. It's just about not fucking up. If you make less mistakes, you win, but you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make a lot of fucking mistakes, and bad things are going to happen.
Just make fewer worse ones.
And rugby ultimately was the same way. We know, like, rugby's interesting because it's one of those sports where very rarely do you actually not know what the opposing team is going to do.
Yeah. You
can pretty much predict it every time. And if you're paying attention and you have a good 9 and you have a good fucking back row and you have a good forwards captain, you 100% know what's going on with that field, what the fucking opposing team's trying to set up with their ball movement, or with their movement, where they're driving their fucking pack, where they're taking the ball and stuff. You know when they're setting up to try and hit that outside.
It's never a secret.
The only time that shit starts to happen and you start to fuck up is when you get tired and you stop and you start making more mistakes than the other person.
I've always been amazed at rugby because in my brain of numbers and science, I don't conceptually understand how one team beats another team in rugby. Like, if you draw all the lines out and you have squares versus circles and you draw how things should go, nothing should ever work ever. There's one style of play where you like run an overload, and that's the only thing that ever works on paper is when you overload. And so that's like one of the fundamental things for playing rugby is run overloads, put more guys where they don't have guys. Like, that's the tenet. But that's not how rugby is played. No. It's just punishing failures.
Yep.
It's like, and it's a million individual
it's exploiting mistakes.
Right. And that's why forwards score points. If you're playing rugby, like even at World Rugby, very few forwards score ever.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not how it works. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Mistakes, yeah.
An example.
And Marcus is just giggling because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it doesn't. No.
Oh, go on. Yeah. This reminds me of a statistic with Alan Wynne-Jones, how he's played like 140 matches for for Wales and like 9 or 10 for the Lions, and he scored 9 tries in those 150 matches.
Right.
Oh.
It's just like, it's not your job.
An example from my world is like, I'm sure you've seen fucking soldiers walking in a wedge before. So we break down the fire team. You have 4 men on a fire team. You're walking in a wedge, which is almost identical to a fucking drop on a rugby field, by the way.
I bet you like got into that formation. You're like, hey, I know this.
Yeah, it's very comfortable. So your
point. Did you just grab somebody's hip just out of habit, or?
No. So you have a point man, and then you'll have kind of like you'll make like a V, right? Mm-hmm. You'll have one dude.
Hey, quick question before you get into this: when geese or any bird is flying in a V, like going south, why is one side always longer than the other?
I don't know.
Marcus, do you know?
No.
It's because there's more birds on that side.
Fuck you.
So anyway, um,
Sorry.
you'll have 4 men. You'll have your point man. You'll have 1 on one side and 2 on the other side, and you have different spaces you're supposed to be at, like in different types of environment, because you gotta like maintain command and control of your formation and make sure everyone gets in the right spots. Because most people are stupid, so it's up to the leader of that element to
Most?
make sure. Yes, so it's up to the leader of that element to make sure that no one gets lost or does anything stupid. So whenever you're walking through a big ass field, though, you're supposed to be spread the fuck out. Like you're like looking at 15 to 20 meters in between each individual. The reason that the army came to rely on that spacing is that's far enough apart that one hand grenade can't take out a whole fire team, and that a single burst from a machine gun cannot take out a whole fire team. So one of the big issues that we have to deal with, like one of the like small, not big, but one of the things that you have to constantly focus on correcting and enforcing discipline-wise is people naturally tend to bunch up. You see it all the time in rugby, right? Your backs are supposed to be spread the fuck out, and they just keep inching closer and closer and closer to the ball. You can't run the plays and dominate the field if your backs are only on a third of the field right up next against the forwards. It doesn't work, right? The same thing goes with us, like, right? You start bunching up, all it's doing is making a better target and making mistakes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Chippy whack. Max, what did you want to talk about the other week? You had a, like, you texted us
I will scroll through our Snapchat history and find out.
and find it. Marcus,
Something
so
interesting.
when are we watching Apocalypse Now? Because that is a direct, it's pretty much Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
Anyone that gets uppity about you by saying Apocalypse Now isn't Heart of Darkness,
They're
ooh, it's in a different tropical forest. Ooh, it's war versus war on the indigenous people plus ivory. Ooh, it's the same. It's the music is better in one, and I'll tell you why, because it's a movie, not a book. So, but Marcus wants to watch Apocalypse Now, and I want to watch Apocalypse Now with Marcus.
Joe. So
Also, Joe, yes.
I have it on Blu-ray too, but I think that's the one.
Fair warning, I am going to bring my copy of Heart of Darkness, and I will stop for quotations to just show you guys that it's the same.
It's like a 4-hour-long movie almost, if it's the extended edition.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a fucking, like, the way they made that movie was insane, too. Like, a bunch of, like, they went way over budget. The Francis Ford Coppola had, like, a fucking heart attack.
Oh, that was Martin Sheen.
We
Sheen
can talk
had a
about
fucking heart attack.
Coppola lost
this
100
isn't the
pounds,
original one, but we can talk about how Brandy from the song Brandy is not some sweet, innocent, pure little girl.
I think we talked about that.
That one made me sad. We should talk about the other one we were talking about. Because the other one was, like, mildly political. But the Brandy one just made me sad. Marcus,
What
you
should the
remember the
actual
Brandy one?
focus of combating climate change be?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Because we have not talked about climate change on this podcast yet, because it's a hard one to talk about, because I don't really care enough to read about statistics to have a legitimate discussion based upon that. But this one is mostly theoretical, so and hypothetical, so we don't have to be super accurate about it.
To be fair, the Earth is flat, and Antarctica is holding us in.
We live in a
So-
cube world.
I listened to a podcast where they interviewed a flat earther, so that was fucking rough. So, are we like talking about our own Earth for context? Are we talking about like some theoretical Earth? Are we going to assume that global warming and climate change is happening?
So
and
you are
it is, or are we?
You are responsible for setting policy.
Okay.
And you need to make a focus, or you need to find a focus of what your policy regarding combating climate change is going to be.
On this Earth, probably in the
Yes.
U.S. Right.
I mean, broadly, say you're in a position
Maybe like
where you are
the
able
G7 or the G20 summit or whatever.
yeah, like you're in a international organization. You're actually able to affect political change across the world, and they will follow. Not
Yeah.
So the point of that question is, or what made me think of it was, there's a lot of things that people focus on climate change that isn't necessarily the right thing that they're focusing on, right? So one of the things we focus on a lot is carbon emissions,
Straws.
and
Yeah.
specifically in the United States, the way people focus on climate change is really fucked up, and it really doesn't do a whole lot. It's mostly a feel good campaign. They're not actually focusing on the things that affect climate change, and climate change has become a broad catch-all term for any sort of environmentally destructive act. So we lump pollution into climate change. We lump disposal of nuclear waste into climate change. We lump deforestation into climate change. And frankly, my opinion is that we don't really need to be focused so much on the climate change part of it, because there's some level of climate change that we as humans are going to be completely unable to affect, because so much of it is affected by natural cycles such as sun cycles, rotation, and tilt of the Earth. The Coriolis effect. I can't say words. The tilt of the Earth.
Coriolis?
Coriolis, yeah, there you go. Sorry, I'm tired.
No, you're good.
There's definitely things that can be changed, like what is it, CSC's emissions and all that bullshit. But whenever we look at like carbon emissions in the atmosphere, most of the carbon emissions come from international shipping and cruise ships, not your POV, not your fucking car that you drive to work every day. Now, there are things that you can affect with your car and car emissions, like acid rain and smog, and those are things that are not good. But that is not something that should necessarily be lumped in the same argument as climate change.
Right. Acid rain, not the same as climate change. I take more, I would say, definitely a lefter stance of yours. I acknowledge that there are things that are causing, like there are cycles, the earth does change over time, but we are moving in the wrong direction too quickly. And that's what we've caused. And so like we were on this path, and then we have done this. And I've been like, that's okay. But I agree with you that at an individual level, what I do in central Wisconsin with my cans, like I had a beer, like what I do with this can, is not going to make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. But we need to make a much more global change.
So,
and that targets, like what you're saying, is trade routes and where things are coming from and the amount of transit that even a small good undergoes. Like most things travel thousands of miles when they should be then labeled as luxury goods and sold at a higher price to reduce the amount of them that need to be shipped, or we can make them here. Like there's a lot of things that could be made here that aren't, as well as a lot of systems in a lot of developing countries are still on the older dirty platforms, not on a cleaner manufacturing platform that we've transitioned to here in the US and through most of Europe.
Okay, so one of the best things you could do right away is just buy local. Is basically what I
Yeah.
That makes sense.
yeah.
My solution to global warming is buy local. Buy as local as you can, and when you don't buy local, like clump things together. So like if I buy something from Amazon, do the option where it's like send 7 things in one package, so you send one thing, not 7 individual things.
So that I have a couple of statements I want to make, but first I want to address that.
But as a society.
Yeah. So one of the big issues with that ultimately is, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself because you guys can't read into my head and know what I think immediately.
They can.
Actually,
So one of the issues with that is that shit's made, right? All that shit's made, but it wouldn't have been made if there wasn't demand for it.
Right.
Obviously. So like, no one has already made. I don't think buying in bulk from Amazon a bunch of stuff at the same time is necessarily going to do a lot to reduce any sort of emissions, unless it is stuff that you know is going to be placed on a ship to get there, and that you buying it specifically in bulk is going to not make it, is going to make less of it get on a ship, right? Fuck. What was the first statement? Oh,
Are we agreed?
sorry. No, go ahead.
Are we in agreement that it's one of those things that it's beyond the impact that an individual can make, and it's more focused on we need to change the system at large and probably our consumer habits as a society. Like
So
this is not a little thing that one person, like a bunch of individual,
I don't really care about the
like
change, to be
everyone.
honest. I brought it up because the hypocrisy and lying in the climate change debate pisses me off.
Oh yeah, it's quite ridiculous.
One of the things I do want to point out is I really do think that what you do as an individual actually has more of effect in your day-to-day life and what you're going to see than anything like the policymakers make, right? Because we've never had to live with this, but if you ask your parents, you'll see it. When was the last time you saw trash on the side of the road?
Mm,
When was the last time you went out hunting and just dropped trash in the woods? When was the last time you just...
Shit. So I guess that's trash.
It's biodegradable. When was the last time you
I
just
know.
dumped your old car that you don't want out in your fucking lot and just left it to rot? We don't do that stuff anymore, right?
mm,
Those are individual acts that at some point in time we decided to change, and we don't litter anymore. That is not something people do. It is socially unacceptable to litter. And I would say that all of our lives are much, much better because of that. And it's the small acts like these and buying local to an extent, right? Because you do need to foster national trade, but like food, 100% should be local, and not just because it's reducing emissions. Oftentimes, the food that you grow local is going to be you're going to be spending money that's supporting your community and supporting the people around you, as opposed to some corporation and getting a cut.
and it's usually better for you.
Yeah.
What
well,
were you
Hey,
saying,
Kate.
Marcus?
well, I was gonna say, basically those two things. Yeah, it's good for the community, which is definitely nice. Obviously, because you interact with these people. So it's kind of nice. It's nice to know that you kind of have each other's backs in a way, I guess, if you want to look at it from that perspective. But then, like what you were.
That's what a commie would say.
Yeah. I blame it on Joe. The other thing, what you were kind of saying is like if you buy local, it's probably better for you. So like it's not gonna be like frozen. Is that what you're getting at, or something
That
like
and
that?
when I think buy local, like the ultimate buying local is like going to like
A farmer's
the
market.
farmer's market.
Or
Right.
buying from your
And,
friend
like,
up the
what-
street who has a couple dozen eggs and can't eat them all.
Right, and it's like it's hyper fresh, it's clean stuff. It doesn't have any crazy preservatives. It's not processed, and like ultimately, like that's kind of the best thing you can do. You can still eat a lot of shitty carbs,
So
but at least they're like potatoes are not as bad when they're in potato form versus when they're Pringleized,
So-
whatever the fuck a Pringle is.
I would argue there that the argument isn't so much that the buying local is what's healthier, it's buying whole food and processing it
Yeah.
yourself is what's healthier.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
the other thing is, no, it's not so much commie. That's not really a commie thing. That fits very well into a libertarian or an individualistic idea as well, because you are supporting yourself by supporting the stability and community around you. It's not just like so. The commie stuff would be more. You're sharing it because you have to, because you're distributing it and everyone needs to eat. Buying local and supporting those around you is supporting your community and allowing them to prosper as well for the work that they did. You're still exchanging goods for services.
so you're so close to Russia, the commies bleeding over.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys. So the second statement I want to make, and this might be, I don't know, we'll see. I'll spit it out and see how it goes, is why is climate change actually an issue beyond a human-centric approach? Because one of the big issues there's two ways I see that people attack this mostly. Rising sea levels is going to displace and cause a humanity crisis or fucking whatever it is, a refugee crisis, because so many towns and cities are located so close to the ocean, and the cost to our infrastructure is going to be astronomical to relocate those cities farther inland. The other one is natural wildlife and all that stuff, and that we don't want to cause undue harm on the ecosystems and natural stuff. But we know from history that there's been times where there have been almost or none ice caps, and the sea has been higher. We know that the Earth will recover and go back to its natural state. So what is the point of combating climate change for the sake of the Earth? Combating climate change is not for the sake of the planet or being eco-friendly or for the plants or for the trees or for the deer or for the animals. All that bullshit, that's for people.
Are you mad that it's human centric, or are you mad that we're not saying it's human centric? Because you go saying it's human
Second
centric.
one.
Oh yeah.
I'm fine with people, like, you should be human-centric. We're humans.
Yeah.
You should care
But
about people. But
you're mad at people feigning that it's Earth Day, not save the humans on Earth Day.
I'm mad at people not actually acknowledging what's there. Because you are like, oftentimes the narrative comes by as intentionally misleading in order to pursue and push a certain goal. And that's what bothers me. I don't like it when people lie. And a lot of that argument ends up just with people lying and trying to shove propaganda down your throat to further their cause. Like, I'm completely fine if you want to go, hey man, this is what's happening. Like, we think we think that we're going to see this much increase in temperature over this many years. We think it's going to cause this amount of sea level to rise. Fuck everything else. Here's the cities that are going to be impacted. This is the only thing we're worried about. That makes more sense to me.
You have to take in, it also will increase the rates of extreme weather events. So harsher droughts, harsher floods, harsher tornadoes. So like everyone's going to get impacted by these extreme weathers or these extreme weather events. It's impacting overall weather patterns. Like even in Wisconsin right now, we were in this weird drought. And then we got a bunch of rain. And now we're in this weird, weather is just becoming more extreme in each direction.
Well, weather's one of those tricky ones too, where we only have consistent weather readings back, like consistent, like year to year, accurate, like
150
like
years
the
ago.
micro fucking seasons that we see. Yeah, and it's like that is a decently sized data sample for people, but it's also not. It's not very long, and when you start looking at the Earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a side note that I just learned that apparently it's colder. I think it's colder in like the British Isles than it has been like 200 years ago. And it's just slowly been. There's more rain than what there was like 200 years ago. So take that for what it's worth. But it's just kind of a fun little.
The British Isles should be cold. Like,
Well, look at Scotland's always fucking cold.
but they're like fucking Canada. Like they're way up.
Up.
Nope.
Always
Lost
happens.
Goodbye to you. Goodbye to you.
Every time. It's always every time. But they're way up there northwest. They're not nearly as far south as like they are kind of climate wise, but they get a lot of warm air off the Atlantic because of the prevailing winds. So like the fact that the prevailing winds are changing is kind of bad news because they're much closer to cold than they think they are.
Well, and the important part about this, at least from my perspective, isn't so much.
Side note: fuck England.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Fuck England. England can eat farts.
English.
Their food is gross, and everyone that lives there is sad.
English.
Important part though is like it's not that I don't think people shouldn't be doing more. Like I'm like for different reasons, but I want most of my food to be fucking grown. I want most of my freezer to be stocked by shit I shot or shit I grew. Like, and you should do what you can to not be a wasteful person, but you should be doing that stuff because you're a resourceful, individualistic person. Not necessarily because someone else told you to. And maybe this is just cognitive dissonance trying to find a way to help, but there's also there's a lot of lying in this stuff. It really fucking bothers me.
It's huge. It's such a fucking event. It's like all this pandemic stuff with all the masks and everything. There's so much information that got pushed out so quickly that now everyone's digging through it. It's like, oh, this is untrue. 8 months later, we know this is now false. But at the time, we thought it was true. That's how we understood it at the time.
There's also
So shit changes.
There's
And it's
also
this giant
Fauci
cloud.
going, if you question Dr. Fauci, you question science.
Fauci's done a good job. Everyone likes to rip on Fauci. I have been looking at him as I'm someone that I have a very good understanding of science and virology specifically, and microbiology, and I'm trying to because I like I hang out with a lot of people that don't like Fauci, and I'm trying to find it, and everyone's like, he lied, and then I looked, and he added his scientific doubt. He said, that's not false. We lack the scientific evidence to agree with that theory. And that sounds like a no to a lot of people, but that is essentially a non-answer. So he's playing the scientific game. He's playing the stats game. It's just nobody likes it because whatever he says, it makes people sad. Whether it's the positive or the negative, because if it's the positive, then the pharmacy people are sad because it means there's no longer a problem for them to solve. But if it's in the negative, everyone else is sad because it means people are dying. So he's going to lose, and everyone's going to look at him like he is lying.
In fairness,
regardless of what he says.
He deserves to lose because he's held that current position, that current office since the 70s.
It's because he's the best.
He was one of the original proponents of any sort of like physical contact with a member that has HIV or AIDS is going to spread that.
It's because they didn't know it. He was like,
that's not what you say. How much fucking violence did that spawn?
A lot.
Yeah.
It would save lives too because nobody was doing stuff. The answer is a condom and like don't spit in each other's eyes. There's so much to be fair, AIDS has come a long way. Our understanding of HIV and AIDS and the connection between the two and the spread, but it's like holy shit. At the time, it just kind of popped up. They didn't even discover it because they actively discovered the virus. It was an entirely new class of virus. They had to add 2 new entire classifications of virology to fit HIV because they discovered it because people were getting this kind of very strange cancer that's usually only found in like 2 families of Sicilian men. And they were getting this weird cancer on their skin. They're like, what the fuck? And so they started digging and digging and digging. All these people had no immune system. And they were digging it and they found this virus almost by accident. Like we could talk about that for half an hour.
Sounds like a different podcast.
And it's, yeah, but they didn't find HIV because they found HIV. They had all these people dying, and they're like, what the fuck? And they're like, all these people have the same cancer. What the fuck? Why would they have this cancer? They have no immune system. Why do they have no immune system? It was like, oh, what the fuck? And so when it came out, it was kind of like this pandemic, but unlike this pandemic that spread through lungs, that one was only spread through, we'll call it intimate physical contact.
And blood.
And yeah, but it's this weird thing, and it came out of nowhere. I think you're right that Fauci's been in the same position for a long time. That was the same with that Robert Redfield. He's been around for a long time at the CDC. There should be some fresh faces in there, but other than that first pitch that he threw out the Nats game, which was rough, I think he's doing okay. I'm going to take the firm stance that Fauci's been doing okay. But that pitch was rough. Did you guys see that video?
No.
No.
That thing was, it was closer to first than it was to home base. That shit was fucked up. But I understand the complaints, but it's a language thing, and I will defend Fauci in a pretty significant way.
Whether or not he's right or wrong, his job isn't to be a doctor. His job is to be a politician who has an expertise in the medical profession. Right?
No, he's not.
What?
He's a scientist. He's the leader of the NIH, the National Institute of...
But what was the first part of that? Leader?
He's the scientific communicator.
No. His job is to pass that information on in a way that is discernible by the masses, so everyone is able to understand it and pass on policy recommendations to the government. Whether or not the government follows those recommendations is entirely upon whoever's in power and whoever's the decision maker. I understand.
Right.
But it is also his job to clearly state to the stupidest possible level what is going on.
If you can't understand when I insert doubt into a sentence, I feel like you have way more problems than the pandemic. Like, if you can't discern a non-answer from a definitive no, I feel like you're dealing with a different kind of questions. You should be seeking some help from a different direction than one of the top-end scientists on Earth. Like, you should be talking to maybe a therapist, But it's like
That's too much blood.
when you bring up the masses, you be like the absolute
But
dumbest person. You can't effectively communicate to everyone when you cater to the idiot.
but there's a set percentage, right? Like there's always going to be people. There's going to be people that either willfully or just don't understand information. Because there's going to be people that willfully mistrust it and don't acknowledge it because that's the type of people they are, and understandable.
Mhm.
But that's the type of people they are. And then you're going to have people that just genuinely do not understand it, aren't willing to put the time and effort into understanding it, or just physically are incapable of understanding that information. But it is his job to, as clearly and effectively as possible, translate from medical field into us. Not you, not someone who's going to spend most of their life in the medical field or virology and science.
General science.
Yeah. Send it to me, who failed out of a Bachelor of Art or a Bachelor of Science in a liberal arts college. And stupider. Not that it gets a whole lot stupider than that, but
You're definitely I worked in customer service a little bit now. There's some fun. I met a lady.
no, I
she was
understand. That's the point, right? People are fucking stupid. Those people still
I
need to know
agree
what's going on as best they can.
And that's why the mask thing was such an issue, because he tried to play that game where he catered to the idiot, but he didn't do it quite right. Because he kind of was like, hey, masks aren't great. You shouldn't buy all the masks because people will scalp masks. And then they gave him a chance. I don't know. There's a lot of shit going on.
Yeah. Yeah, there is.
On the topic of dumb people, I had a lady I called because she was missing her 1 o'clock appointment. She was in the system for a 1300. On her piece of paper it said 1300. And I called her and said, hey, it's 1 o'clock. We're ready for your appointment. And she went, my appointment's not until 3. And I went, well, no. We have you here for a 1 o'clock, a 1300. And she went, yeah, 1300, 3 o'clock. And then I gave up because I died a little on the inside. So I do suppose that raising the topic of communicating to someone that can listen versus communicating to somebody that has ears is a very significant distinction.
So,
Can we talk about
devil's advocate, whoever gave her the appointment as 1300 failed her because they did not clearly dictate to her the expectation. They did not ask her if she understood and made sure she clearly understood that 1300 meant 1 o'clock.
We've definitely we've noticed
Yeah.
that was something in our system. Like everything in the clinic is military time because it's easier objectively than trying to be like AM, PM, whatever the fuck. Because in the clinic, you work 24 hours.
If you have to communicate over like any sort of like weird communications or like
it's just
constantly doing stuff, yeah, it's
It's
1700
like
to 1700, but 5 o'clock, we would just say, I need you here at 5. If you're a 24-hour clinic, you don't know, or like if you have shifts that start at 4, it's like, is that 5 in the morning or is that 5 at night?
Exactly. But yeah, we've noticed that. Like but it became a thing of like, oh, this is super fucked up. We should change that. All the letters are sent. Fuck. So now we just get to deal with that on the back end.
Yeah.
By the way, next time you think that things are organized, and let alone organized enough for a grand cabal of evil and a conspiracy, just remember, and I probably shouldn't be discerning this, so at our study...
I work in the Army. I know how organized things are.
Oh my god. We have... Marcus is at Walmart. He's the same thing. He just has to hit me like this. So right away in the pandemic, there was this tube shortage. So you couldn't get any tubes that contained viral transport medium. Whatever. Motherfuckers, the CDC found a hot source for them. Whatever. I'm not going to name them because I'm not that guy. But they sent our study, who needed these tubes, a whole bunch. Like all the tubes we could ever need for anything. And they didn't look into the fact that similar to milk, this thing that has proteins in it goes bad. So we have about $90,000 worth of viral transport medium filled tubes that Keegan gets to throw away. But it's technically biohazard, so we literally have to pay to get rid of it.
Conspiracy.
And then we were curious. We did the math. I will be throwing away more tubes than we would need for the entire study. So they sent us like more than double, close to triple what we actually needed. And
Now,
yeah.
Here's the kicker. This study, is it going to be finished before the tubes expire?
No, that's the thing.
So you're going to have to order more anyway.
Right. We're using different tubes right now. It's so dumb. It's like, this is a year-long study. When do the tubes go bad? In 7 months. And it's like, no, like this study, realistically, it's going to take 2 years, and these tubes are going to go bad 7 months after the first tubes go out. Like, they go bad next month.
That's always been my argument with aliens.
Like, they're here, but they're just laughing at us because we're not dumb enough to see them, or what the fuck?
No, there's no way that there could have been a government conspiracy, because if you rolled the fucking Army or Air Force in, some dumbass E3 that was trying to get laid would totally tell some stupid chick at the bar that he pulled security on Roswell.
There's too many people.
Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed that out, and I love that.
That's one of the ultimate destroyers of the flat Earth. You have all these different space agencies that all hate each other, like the American and the Russian one during the Cold War, and they both went to space, and they used the same math, and that involved a round Earth. Is that because they agree at some core level, or is that just because that's how it fucking is?
But math is racist.
Objectively, I can't even disagree.
Oh.
I could use math to prove it.
I like that.
Fuck.
That had fucked up.
Yeah, it did.
Marcus, what have you been up to?
A whole lot. So I ordered a fat head collection or whatever, and the fat heads all had like rugby players, and they were all those terrible. I don't know if I sent the photos to you or not.
You did.
So okay, yeah, but like it was like Stuart Hogg before he had hair transplant. Alan Wynne Jones. Everyone looked like a fucking goof. I found the most
Dorks and orcs.
Yeah, orcs being orcs. Found the worst photo of Sam Underhill ever. And I got the fucking fathead package today. Me and Joe were like, yee! We're all like giddy because we're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. We're gonna ruin the whole house with this. We open it up and there's a child on the first one, and we're like, what the fuck? I'm like, no, oh no. And Joe's like, no, maybe it's just the first one. All the photos, all the fatheads we got were some child.
Was it the same child?
I think it was 2 children actually. But if we
it looked like standard baby memes.
Kind of, but no, it was like someone's child, definitely. Like there was a shitty photo where like half the face was like cropped off or whatever. But yeah, so we're like, okay, if we can get these, someone got a orc and a couple bald dudes and guys with fucked up ears. We're like, oh, this is great. But I'm also very pissed because it's like $75.
I had a side question on this one. Who gets fat heads of their kids?
I don't know.
Is it to be funny?
Maybe
Yes.
it's
That's
just
a weird.
As a kid.
I would do that to
Is it
fuck
to
with
put
people.
behind?
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe they're going to like daycare. They're gonna pick them up and they're gonna wave a picture of the kid.
But none of it makes sense.
I would do that if I owned a gym.
No, you put little kids behind doors and shit to scare people.
Yeah. Or
What the fuck?
I'd put them in front of the squat racks.
So you gotta stare down this child.
Yeah. So you're going up for a max attempt squatting, and there's just big ass fucking baby smiling at you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that.
Yeah, that's the point. Fuck them. If they were actually strong, they'd deal with it.
That's the mark. Can you squat while staring at this baby?
Well, I mean, if you care, if you care about the squat, whatever's in front of you doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I'd be able. Oh, that was one of those dumb things I'd do.
I would just take.
I feel like
down.
it would. I feel like you'd get better like as your weight went up because you would focus more on the lift. But I feel like if you're just doing like your normal sets or even like a lighter set to like warm up or something, you just fucking break because every single time you zone back out and
I just
do
start
that
laughing.
fucking thing. Yeah,
I've squatted while laughing before.
it counts. Oh fuck.
Well, I think I'm gonna go because I still have to eat and work out and shower.
Yeah, it's about that time.
Sayonara.
Bye.
Covered a lot of ground this podcast.
That was a good one. Oh, hey, look at that.
Thanks for listening.
It's almost even an hour.
Yeah, perfect.
Remember to unlike, unsubscribe, leave a nasty comment on someone else's YouTube channel because fuck them. They don't fucking deserve it.
They deserve to stare at a baby while they try and max.
Exactly. They deserve to stare at a baby while they try me.
I was thinking.
Thanks everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.